don't be afraid to ask for help because we don't have to go it alone. This process does not have to be just one person sitting at a computer or a typewriter, as we used to say. Have the help of other people. Ask them opinions about what's the book that I should be writing. Asking opinions of other people will help you to come back to yourself and say, okay, now I've got the clarity I need to move
Yeah.
forward.
Hey everyone, it's Melanie Johnson, one of the owners of Elite Online Publishing. We're here with another wonderful publishing podcast today. So, we have an author who has written two of his own books, plus, he's been part of a compilation book, and he is going to walk us through his journey. His latest book just came out this year. So, his name is Tony Martignetti. And, Tony, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
So, tell us a little bit about your two books and why you wrote them.
The first one was definitely the hardest one, I think, because, you have this, who am I to write a book? That element is
Imposter
hard.
syndrome.
Yes, exactly. But, one of the things that I will point out about this process is that when you break it down and you really kind of, look at the elements of what it takes to write a book, it's really not so challenging as long as you're willing to lean into to imperfections, if you will. So let me tell you about the books. My first book is called Climbing the Right Mountain. And it's a book about defining success in our own terms. We often spend time climbing this mountain of success that is defined by other people. And sometimes we have to stop and take a step back and say, what is it that I want on that journey?
Mhm.
And how do I, think about what my definition of success would look like? So that's what the first book was about. It's self-published and it was something that I really enjoyed at the end, but the process was always challenging. So
So tell us, did you self-publish both of your books?
no, my second book was published through a publishing house through Routledge, and that's a label under Taylor and Francis. So usually they publish very technical books or more like psychology and business books. And I was glad to work with them. They got the book a lot of reach. And this particular book was called Campfire Lessons for Leaders. And the
Mhm.
book was a compilation of lessons that I've learned from working. I've interviewed over 200 people on my podcast called The Virtual Campfire. And I realized there was so many great, amazing people and insights and stories that I needed to find a place to really bring this to life and to share it broader. And so that's where this campfire lessons came from is it was this idea of how do I share those stories, but also in a way of ensuring that people see the through line of what were the themes that showed up. So there's 10 lessons, but the overarching theme of the book is, how when we understand our stories, it can propel us forward, but also it's a path to connecting with ourselves so that we can connect better with others.
I love that you repurpose the content
Mm,
because here at Elite Online Publishing, Jen and I, we are all about repurposing your content.
yeah.
Create it once, and we say, like, if you're doing a podcast, do it with on purpose so you can turn it into a book, or if you're doing your book, do it so you can turn it into a course or a speech or a podcast.
Mm.
So we just love that you repurpose the whole thing. That is amazing. So tell us what doors and opportunities have opened since you've published your books and how has it maybe changed you or other people's lives?
Yeah, I mean, definitely so many things have happened since both books, and even the first one has continued to bear fruit, which is interesting because that was published in 2021. The first thing is this ability to be able to walk into a room and have a book I can, share with clients, potential clients, and with people speaking engagements that I go to, which is wonderful. That first book was picked up by somebody at a big pharmaceutical company, and it landed me at a 2,000 person speaking gig, which is pretty wonderful. I can't
Wow.
complain about that. And so it's definitely opened the door to lots of opportunities for speaking, but it's also opened the door for some amazing conversations. And
Mhm.
it's gotten me to realize that when you write a book, it's the start of what becomes, thought leadership upon thought leadership, ways to get into conversation with others and see that what you're talking about has an impact on other people and they want to collaborate with you on developing other things. So that's been a real follow on effect. And I've also developed programs. I mean, with my book, Campfire Lessons for Leaders, I developed this program that I bring into companies called Campfires of Connection, which is really taking some of the elements of the book into the workplace and allowing people to experience how do I build better connections with my employees.
Wow. So I always tell people that it's not just about the royalties from the book, it's about these doors that open and the opportunities. It sounds like you've had an immense amount of them since you published your first book.
Yes, definitely. And it's all what you make of it, really. You could write a book and just say, okay, there's a book and, go buy it. And then it just becomes something that sits on the shelf, but you have to actively be in communication with it, if you will. You have to be in communication with other people around the book. And it's hard because for myself, and this is being vulnerable, but also for many people who are authors, sometimes it can feel like you're taking your baby and you're kind of like showing it to the world and say, "Look at my baby, it's so wonderful." But and that's not my style. I'm not that kind of person who likes to be on display all the time. But the reality is, you deserve people deserve to hear the messaging, and this is why you do what you do because you want to serve. And so you have to get out and you have to share your baby with the world and allow it to have a life beyond yourself.
I love that because usually, we tell people your book is now a business.
Yeah.
It's a product that you have to keep promoting that can serve you over and over again. And I think it is that mindset of it's like you say, I love that analogy. Oh, it's my baby. And everyone's like, oh yeah, your kid is cute. Like, you know what I mean? But it really is the mindset of no, this can help you. I want to give you something to make your life better. I want to feed you, give you an asset that's going to make improve your life. So I think
Yeah.
that's really good. Let's dive into your whole writing process. Obviously, you said it wasn't as hard as you thought, or your second book wasn't as hard because you repurposed
Yeah.
the content. Take us through the process of like how you wrote the first book because you wrote that one
Mm.
yourself. Was it difficult? Did you block out time? Because we have authors are like, I'm trying to get it done, but I just can't get it
Yeah,
done.
I'll talk about both books because there's, the first one, what happened was as I was thinking, well, can I write a book or do I have a book in me kind of thing? And I started to think to, what have I written already? And so I started to look at the articles and the blogs and the things that I had written and the content, and I started to compile and connect the dots of all the things that I had already been talking about and said, what's the through line?
Mm,
What are the things that these pieces all have in common? And that's where, although it was challenging, what I found is as I was piecing together, taking little elements of things I'd written in the past and organizing them
yep.
and placing them together and saying, oh, the through line is this. And that's what the book became. It became a compilation of sorts of things I'd written in the past, but then reworked and rejiggered and
Yeah.
reorganized into something that became the book. Now, the challenging part is because it's your first time, is you're trying to figure out, is this good enough? Is this, am I gonna be able to share a meaningful piece that will have people writing the book? And that's why I said I'm embracing the imperfection of this. It doesn't have to be a New York Times bestselling piece. It just has to be a book that I'm proud of and that other people,
Yeah.
will be able to consume. It's readable. And what it turned out to be is that it was a lot of the feedback from that first book was that people loved that it was very accessible and easy to read and,
Mhm.
something that didn't have to be this big, massive novel that, you had to sit down and read over, months and months. Oh, is acceptable.
Yeah, we tell people, 150 pages is plenty.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be 350 pages. Did you ever send it out to like do we call it beta readers, but did you like test it out before you published it? Like gave the manuscript to a few people, hey, what do you think?
I did, and I was kind of nervous about that, and to be honest with you, people came back and said, "Wow, this is really good. You've got something here that is really powerful, and, don't change a thing." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. I'll take that." But even still, once you put it out there, you still have this feeling of like, "Oh god, what do I do
Yeah.
now? What do I do now?"
Like it's out there, but don't read it.
Yeah. But it's really amazing. I brought it with me. I climbed Kilimanjaro a few years ago, and
Wow.
I brought a copy of the book, well, many copies of the book with me, but I gave it to someone who I met there. And while I was on the trip, I gave it to them at the beginning, and then at the end of the trip, they said, "I love this book, and I'm going to buy copies of this for the people who are here locally because A, it's readable for them, and it just has this inspiring message for, how to
Yeah.
kind of change the path you're on." And I'm like, "Wow, how cool is that?" You know? So,
Yeah, that makes you feel good when you've changed somebody's life and inspired them because
yeah,
of your message, I think that's like, I see you light up when you're talking about and that's like the biggest best ROI that you can get is when you really change somebody's life or inspire them, I think, with
100%,
the whole thing.
100%. And I just want to share a little bit about my other book because I think this was, even though you say, okay, well, yeah, sure, it came from, these stories that are already there in terms of the podcast. But I will say the
Yeah.
hardest part was honoring people is that you're bringing people's stories to life and you want to be careful because people shared really vulnerable moments with me. And here I am, putting it into paper and I want to make sure that I handle their stories with care. So, as though
Yeah.
even though the second book was easier and it was also longer, I actually wrote a book that was like twice the length. I had to cut it down, which was hard.
That is hard.
Yeah. And so, but it also had this element of how do I treat people's stories with the care that
Mhm.
I needed to make sure that I
Yeah.
ensure that it meets the notes of what they would want to put out to the world.
Yeah, you had to be really conscientious about that,
Mm,
if it's just all your own material, which makes sense.
yeah.
Um, I get that. What do you think the differences were for you doing the self-publishing route versus having a publisher?
I will be as kind as possible. There's something about self-publishing that is a lot more fun and easy. And I'm not saying that because, publishing there's great publishers out there, but I felt like I had a lot more creative freedom about how I could lay it out and how I would be able to, set the font. And I like design. I'm a design nerd. So it felt like there was a lot of constraints working with a publisher. But, I think you have to be a little more opinionated and share what you want with the publisher and be a little more communicative. And I think maybe that's what I lacked in the moment of working with that publisher is that I
Yeah.
probably didn't share enough with them about what I wanted the book to be.
And, it just depends on the publisher that you work with. If it's more of
True.
a traditional publisher, you do lose a lot of that freedom. They're gonna say, "No, this is what it is," and you're limited, and they just give you a hard no. We work with traditional publishers all the time to help them do the marketing for an author's book and make them a bestseller.
Mhm.
So we've seen the inside of that and kind of the blockbuster-ish, like they're behind the times, they're a little bit more archaic,
Yeah.
but they have their set way of doing things. You wanna work with a publisher, which is what we do, is where it's really your creative vision coming to life. We're gonna steer the ship to make sure you're not gonna make mistakes. We're gonna have our graphic designers create an amazing cover for you that is on brand,
Yeah.
right? So, and I will say this with complete kindness, the Campfire book doesn't look like your website at all. Like there's no connection
Yeah.
of that cover to your personal brand. So we want to make sure everything is brand centric, that it all looks like you. So the whole machine is moving together versus it looks like this one off piece here and a one off piece there, if that makes sense. So it is working with the right people.
Yeah, and I hear you. And here's the thing: is first of all, my website is. I'm thinking about a redesign, but I also have another book I'm contemplating, and I'm thinking about what path I'm going to take. So we'll have to talk about that. My next book is going to be something personal, but also very, very different than
Yeah.
books I've written in the past. It's about outlier leadership, and
Mhm.
being outliers is about these people who really are technical in nature who have a hard time connecting with others, but they need to harness the power of other people. So,
Yeah, and, we all need to expand our circles,
yeah.
It's the even us outgoing ones, I was saying, I work from home and it's hard to get, you gotta make an effort to make that community,
Mhm.
of doing that. Another thing I noticed with your book, I always like to do a little bit of coaching, is to make sure that you have a call to action in the beginning of the book. So when I preview the book, you're taking them to a place to an opt-in. You know what that is, where
Yeah.
people can leave their name and email and they can connect with you. So then you're growing your list that for your next book and your other books that they're now part of your ecosystem. So it's all about marketing and making sure you have the right things in there. And again, making sure you have the right partner that gives you that creative freedom. You're doing that. But the things you did right is it's all your books are connected on your Amazon author page. So that's yay, because a lot of times that doesn't happen. And I
Mhm.
did see A plus content on there. So that was good. I'm glad that they had that in there. So you did
Mhm.
have some good things on there as well.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I love that you say that because there's an element of like, if I luckily had, I've had a lot of great connections in the past before I even got into this book. So I
yeah,
had a lot of champions who are helping me along this process. But I do feel like, yeah, it's so important to get that call to action and be able to build an audience around, what you're trying to do because you don't want a book to fall into the ether and just be like, you know,
right.
have something really beautiful end up not having a place to land.
Exactly, exactly. Well, we look forward to your next book. What advice would you give someone who is looking to write a book or is in the process right now?
Definitely start without don't hesitate. Do it without having it fully framed out, but just start writing and creating a path to making that happen and get help. And, we talked earlier or in previous conversations about don't be afraid to ask for help because we don't have to go it alone. This process does not have to be just one person sitting at a computer getting or a typewriter, as we used to say, have the help of other people, ask them opinions about what is it what's the book that I should be writing that you think, you know, asking opinions of other people will help you to come back to yourself and say, okay, now I've got the clarity I need to move
Yeah.
forward more powerfully.
That's great advice, great advice. And for anyone else, if you're looking for help, we do a VIP book creation day where you start from scratch, that you get almost 10,000 words written in a day and have that clarity of what you should be writing about and get the topic that's best for your business and your brand. And don't be afraid to ask for a ghostwriter or a book coach. Those can help you along the way too. And sometimes we all need that. I know I need that when I'm doing one of my books. I need to have someone come alongside me along the way. And another great tip I think is having that accountability of putting it on social media that I'm writing a book. So all of a sudden everyone's like, "Oh, when's your book coming out?" So
Mhm.
then you have this kind of born in accountability of friends and family that are saying, "You want to keep
Pressure.
writing the book?" So you don't feel like, "Oh yeah, that was 2 years ago. I'm still working on that."
Well, I mean,
But
as I said, I've already told you I'm writing the next book, and
yes,
I will say that I'm not far along in the process, but that's okay. I didn't really tell you when I'm going to do it.
that's right. But you put it out there in the universe. So
Well,
I love that. I love
yeah.
that. Well, tell people where they can connect with you.
Yes, absolutely. The best place to find me is at my website, ipurposepartners.com. And on LinkedIn, you can find me there, Tony Martignetti, which is the best place to find me.
Terrific. And we'll put all that in the show notes. Thanks, Tony, for coming today. And remember, if you're looking to write a book, to reach out to us at Elite Online Publishing. We're known for making our authors #1 bestsellers. We'll see you next time and keep writing, everybody.
If you want to write a book and become a best-selling author, you're in the right place. At Elite Online Publishing, we can help you create, publish, and market your book so that it becomes a #1 bestseller. We work with a limited number of authors to ensure that they receive the best possible service. So if you want to learn how to write and publish a book that will empower you to smartly grow your brand, business, and credibility, apply today. We look forward to working with you.